The realest ones. No, well, I told the guys that I told them after the game that if we had going into the game, if we had found a way just to win the game, there's only going to be so much frustration that I could have no matter how we played. You get to the last game before conference. You look at what our conference is doing right now and the anticipation from our players to get going in the conference. It was a hard game for us to get going. And so sometimes the best way to do it is just to get into the locker room at halftime, regroup, and then get to the business in the last 20 minutes is what we were able to do in the second half. But, we turned the ball over 11 times, not to take anything away from them, but they weren't pressing or trapping like that, just bad decisions, carelessness with the ball, not making strong moves. And then second half, you only end up turning the ball over twice, so you got some good shots, finished around the basket, got to the free throw line. But all in all, the non-conference was challenging for us. I think we challenged ourselves, and I think it was a very successful non-conference. It did exactly what we wanted it to do. I think we grew from it. We took a couple of bumps, but I think we grew and got better, and completely different team now than what we were on November, whatever it was, 7th or whatever it was that we first played. 4th? Okay.
I asked one of the players this earlier, but how much are those, because you guys went on a few runs, especially that one to end the half where you guys pulled away, how much are those runs sort of emphasized in your game?
How much are they emphasized? I don't know. We're trying to go possession by possession. Sometimes the guys talk about getting a defensive kill, which is 3 stops in a row. I really don't say a whole lot about that myself. We're just trying to do it possession by possession. If you can stack enough of them up, then you'll get momentum on your side, and singles and doubles typically get it done. Every now and then, if you can hit a gapper with 2 guys on base, you get some runs that come in, or a home run, but singles and doubles move guys from station to station, and that's what we wanted to do, just one possession at a time, just to figure out how to make this next possession be a good possession. So it just turned out that we stacked some of them up and had a couple of good, nice runs, and that helped. That helps change the tide. I don't think it was like quick. We pressed, steal, lob dunk on the other end, steal, 3, timeout, come back out, timeout again. It's kind of a slow grind into what ended up being a couple of good, really nice runs.
Okay, Coach, did you let Tanner Bronson do the halftime speech this time?
Yeah. I got to get him on the pregame speeches.
looks like that's a recipe now. But seriously, if we talked about it once, we talked about it twice about the slow starts, right?
Yeah.
Going into SEC play, like, you've had the time to tune it up, and it hasn't quite gotten there. Does that trouble you at all, or how do you feel about that going into?
Well,
schedule?
the alternative would be, there's a lot of alternatives. One would be to play 2 great halves. I think we'd all like to do that. The other alternative would be to play a really good first half, and then in the second half, you're hanging on for dear life, and maybe you don't make it there. I like what we've done better than that one. So I try not to. I looked last year at a bunch of our games. I look at the number of close games that we had. We're going to have a lot of close games again this year. I think we were 8-2 in games that were 5 points or less last year. 9-2, I think, if you count the exhibition game with Wofford. That was a 3, ended up winning by 3. All right, we're going to be in a lot of close ones. I try not to get caught up in the ebbs and flows of, all right, this was the first half, the second half ended up being great. I try not to get caught up in that. Certainly, we'd like to get off to a better start. And we're going to play some teams that if you play as poorly as we've played in some of these starts, you're going to be buried so far that there's no coming back. I mean, you're going to want to pack the bags and the bus up at halftime. But we'll be better, hopefully, at the start of games. But if we have a couple of slow starts, we just got to keep fighting and grinding and figure out how to get it together and, make a couple adjustments. We've done that at halftime a couple times too. Sometimes it's not a lot of adjustments. Sometimes it's really, focus. I don't think as we move forward, I don't anticipate in any of our conference games that not being ready to go or not being motivated or overlooking any particular game. I don't think that would be anything. We may have some slow starts because we don't play well, we don't shoot well, or we're not accustomed to what the other team is doing. It may take some time, but hopefully we'll get some better starts. But if we can keep having strong finishes, that's it. We're heading in the right direction with that.
So speaking of those close games, would you sort of say it's better that you guys got those close? Well, you said there's going to be more in the future, but how important is it that you got a lot of those close games out the way early?
No, it's extremely important. I think in those moments, players have to be pretty calm if they're going to perform, if they're going to make a late game free throw, if they're going to make execute a play, maybe even something that they've never done before that you draw up just because the clock's low. We did it today on an out of bounds underplay. We'd never run it and we executed it great. I think in a late game situation where it's close, I think if you're in panic mode, which if you've never been there, particularly if you're expected to win the game, you may be frazzled, right? And if you're frazzled, the chances of execution go down. So I think most coaches would draw it up to have a variety of really close games, late game situations that you had to perform in, defensive strategies that you had to execute, whether that's foul while you're up 3 or switch everything or whatever it is. I think for a team's growth, I think most coaches would like to have 5, 6, 7, 8 of those games at some point during the season. Now, the metrics would say, I think there's a component of if you win by like 40 against a team that's not great, that it helps your overall net ranking. So, I guess there's some value to doing that also. But for me, I do think there's a lot of value in playing some close games like this, so that you're getting in a league. You're going to be close games. It's just what it is. You're not going to blow many people out, and hopefully you don't get blown out too much. But there are going to be a lot of close games, so you got to be familiar with what that territory looks like.
Has anything changed preparation-wise or kind of with you guys' mentality going into SEC play? And overall, kind of what are your thoughts on the gauntlet that's ahead of you?
Yeah. I don't know. As far as our preparation, not too much. I think it'll still be trying primarily to focus on us doing the things that make us a good team well, and then tweaking those things relative to who we play and how they play. But I do think it's a little bit of a different mentality. I think you do have to be able to get on, to use the golf analogy again, I think you have to get from one hole to the next hole, right? Coincidentally enough, we play 18 league games and there's 18 holes in a round of golf. And you may bogey the first hole, right? I think there's a couple bogeys that are baked into a really good score for a regular Mo like me on the golf course. If you're a pro, maybe you can't bogey too many, but I think there's some bogeys that are built in, and you can recover from those bogeys, but you got to be able to get to the next hole. If you're thinking about the first bogey and then so now you're trying to get a birdie or an eagle on the next hole, you're likely to do something really bad, double bogey maybe. I just think you have to. I think that mentality, and when the league is this good, and you have this many quad one opportunities, you're going to have to be able to turn the page from one game to the next. It's not to mean that you don't care. It's not to be that you don't learn from it, but you can't let it affect your next performance. You just can't. I think they're all such good, tough, hard games that I think, you're going to always say, we lost to a really good team. And so because of that, you got to get to the next page and play the next game. So I think that would be the only change in mentality, which, like in the non-conference, you're kind of talking about the totality of the non-conference. What does it look like? There's some individual games that you want to win. A la Clemson's comes in here, top 25. We played 2 other teams that were ranked in the top 25. Those are great opportunities for us. There's some losses that you certainly want to avoid. But when you look back at that whole thing, you want the non-conference to look the way it's supposed to look as you head into the league play. When you get a league like this, I think it's one game to the next, and you start to just count how many games you can win.
Talking about Cam Scott, you said before that you were kind of going to try to get a little bit more one-on-one time with him going into the break and kind of help him forget about some of the struggles early.
Yeah.
What did that look like, and has there been any advice from you and the coaching staff to him as we progress the SEC play?
Yeah, I think one thing we did was, we got him more reps. He's getting more live reps at practice just because he's on the scout team some. And, a kid's going to look at that one of 2 ways, and he's really looked at it the right way. And he's been able to, portray some really good players for, maybe, let's say, a quarter of the practice or a third of the practice. And then he gets reps with the other team to make sure he knows what our plan is as we go into this game. And so early in the season, we weren't doing that as much. He just was with the other guys, with the main guys. And I think it's worked wonders for him in terms of his confidence. He's probably seen more shots go in practice over the last 2 weeks than he has in a long time. So it's a process with him. We had him in there relatively late in the game today, did a couple really good things for us. He's still continuing to grow. I was hoping situationally we were in a position to where I could have played him even more in tonight's game. At certain times it wasn't like that. We were making a move, and the group that was in there, so we rode that group as long as we could. But he's continuing to make good progress, and he's been working hard over the break.
You touched on it there a bit, but he hasn't played a lot to start the year. Kind of curious on what it would be for him to play a little bit more. Is it just situational, this is the guy we need, or is it maybe we need you to do a little bit more of this for you to get more on the court?
Yeah, well, honestly, I want all the guys to play 40 minutes, but just there aren't that many minutes in the game. So it's hard for me to say that I got to do this specifically to make sure Cam gets more minutes. That's hard. You got a lot of guys on your team. Now, he's got such an upside that we have conversations all the time about, is the timing right to do this? I'm constantly thinking about it during the game. But there won't be many games where he doesn't have an opportunity to play. I'll put it that way. And then a lot of it will be, how does he play and how's the game going? Is it a game where, from a physicality standpoint, he's going to have to guard a guy that's going to be trying to really go at him, or can we put him in a situation where he can guard a guy that does things that lend him to guarding him better? So it's just, he's going to be a good player. He's growing and getting better, and so we just go from game to game, see what it looks like. But he's getting better for sure.
Anything else for Coach? Thanks, guys. Thanks. Thank you.
All right.